Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Thank you guys for joining me on such short notice. Can you guys hear me? Can somebody in the chat room give me a thumbs up or let me know that you can hear me? Hey, Scott. Hey, JB, Chris, Freedom Fighter, Carlos, Rebecca, Kelly. It's great to see you guys. So this was kind of impromptu. Been wanting to do more lives, most definitely. I was going to do a video while I was meditating out there, and then decided, because the neighbor was blasting the leaf blower. You know, he's about 100 yards away, but you could still hear him. So I thought, why not go live? It's been a while, and I like doing it on short notice, so there would be less of a chance, hopefully, of interference from, powers that be. And so right now we got a green live stream, which is great. And how are you guys doing? I've missed everybody too, most definitely. It's good talking to you guys and being live and seeing you guys chat and grow together. And there's so much going on in this world. So much going on. But the main thing, really, I think the biggest thing is that we have to recognize that we're in a period of growth. And this is really a time to go within and to release and let go everything that does not serve us, however that may be. Many of us are really awakening to the fact that we are, as we might term it, multidimensional beings. We're basically operating on more levels of consciousness than just one simple level of consciousness. And reality is changing. Yes, the Schumann is kicking up. The Schumann's giving us the clues and telling us, that reality is changing. It's changing around us all the time. And the sun is changing. Stack lost power. Sorry, Stack. Good to see everybody. Hello, Crystal. And everything is changing, but I truly believe, hi Sheila, I truly believe that the most important thing is it's all about consciousness and vibration. And one of the things that I think we have to do, which can be so hard in these times, is to let go of as much fear as possible, because fear will pull us down. And that's something I've always basically struggled with, is, covering everything that's going on and at the same time not wanting to be a fearmonger. And it's hard to do it in a way that you're not promoting fear. When you see everything that we see, we saw the floods down in Rio, which was crazy, just wild. And I kind of got the impression from the mayor down there, his statements, that he almost didn't view it as a natural thing. And that's to each his own to decide what they feel is causing all these things that we're seeing all around us. Sharon's asking if I'm part of the Wind channel. Nope, not part of the Wind channel. That was one of the channels that was basically taking content and using it. There's quite a few of them like that. It's just one of the things that we go through, here. And the biggest thing that we're going through right now is basically, and I've checked a whole bunch of people's channels that are on the same wavelength as us, and such as I've looked at, Leak Project, I've looked at Florida Marquis, I've looked at, say the Higher Self channel even. I've looked at, a good, I'd say 15 to 20 channels that are very similar to this, and everybody is unique in their own way. and all their numbers are like a third of the views of what they used to be. And yet we see now that they're doing double commercials a lot at the beginning of videos, regardless of what videos those are. And as a creator, we can't put in double commercials, so that's something that it's not, the creators doing. So anyway, as we've talked about the First Amendment, it's a sign of the times that we're in right now, as we see this push to basically silence, and it's part of the machine. There really is, as David just said, there is a real fight between good and evil, and for sure. And really, what it's a fight about? It's a fight over your consciousness. It's totally a fight over your consciousness, because really, well, we need to go within. And in so many traditions, we've been taught to fear that. And we really, really need to go within to really grow. And it's really all about growth. And Johnny says, some even slowed down your videos so the voice was distorted. Yeah. And also, if you guys could have seen the stuff I went through in the last week, with right before they went to this change in tactics, basically. Good morning, Irish whiskey. Right before this, I was getting all sorts of crazy technical glitches. I did a video, and then I played it back, and it sounded like I was James Earl Jones on steroids. It was hilarious. The voice was so deep. And then I realized what they did was they changed the settings in my computer on my sound system, because I still posted it, and that was like my second or third take on that video, because there was technical problems again. And I still posted it anyway. And then when I listened through a friend's phone, I realized, it was only on my computer that it sounded that way. I sounded normal on the other one. So, there's all sorts of things, but right now they've shifted to where what they're doing is they're basically showing about a third of the views that we are typically getting, and so they're basically starving us out. So, we no longer can count on making a living doing this as well. So this has to become just a hobby, and it's just another step of what they're doing, and it's going to definitely push a lot of us back into the machine, in a sense, and going back into, for instance, in some cases, people will be going back into the corporate world. And that's what they want us in. They want us in the machine. They want us in the matrix, and that's part of the whole thing that's going on right now, because I feel like, truthfully, we have an opportunity to break out of the matrix. And they don't want that. They want to keep us locked into the matrix. And that's part of the thing that we're seeing right now, and the real crackdown, which is very, very real. The crackdown it's just so obvious right now. And so we're faced with basically losing our ability to communicate with everybody, or changing things, toning things down, shifting the message. I do think that as we go deeper into this cycle, so many people, even the people that were totally asleep before, they're awake to the changes. You cannot you just can't ignore these changes. They're so obvious. And so I think more and more people are awakening to that. Hello, Sugar. And there's nothing they could do about that, because the changes are pretty obvious. And so we need to shift more to, looking at how can we lift ourselves up, because that's what it's really all about, is lifting ourselves up, and then, lifting others up as we go up. Because if we're holding on to our own baggage and we can't release our own baggage, then, how could we really help others and lift others up? So it's all about processing and getting rid of anything that does not serve us and does not serve who we really, really are. Because, when we come into the body, we're faced with all the, human emotions, and so many of them can be manipulated through fear. And fear is the easiest way in which to manipulate people. And Miss Dragon says the Slee Stacks and Land of the Lost was a way for us to get used to the reptilians, and maybe they will be out here actually in the open among us at some time shortly. And this is me is saying, is anybody else feeling intermittently irritable? And most definitely. See, that's part of what we're going through. We're processing things. We're really, really processing things. And we're being faced with ourselves, completely faced with ourselves right now. And it's so important for us to recognize, to face the things that we need to let go of, to realize the areas that we need to work on, and to realize also, where we're allowing ourselves to be manipulated through fear. Fear of lack, fear of money, not losing your ability to support yourself, your family, your loved ones. Obviously, fear of all the earth changes, because that's such a big thing now. And we're seeing these incredible storms everywhere you look. And, it's hitting all sorts of diverse places. And, some places that you would think would be very safe. So the Roots and Branch Homestead, quit your job, sell everything, file bankruptcy, and say to hell with your credit karma. Buy a camper, an acre of land, grow your food, become self-sufficient. The universe will welcome you. That's exactly what I've been thinking, honestly, in so many ways. Just simply, I've been revisiting the idea of just, buying a camper and just a plot of land and then just starting to grow things. The plan was basically to try to get a good homestead going. But with the way things are fiscally, it might have to be revised. Maybe it's just going to be finding a camper and then finding a affordable, acre or two of land, and that is it. Plop down, live out of the camper, and just, yes, and definitely, Katie, don't forget the blow-up raft. That is so important in these times. You are not kidding. And property taxes are BS. I totally agree with you. You never own anything. And if you guys, maybe you're aware of the laws, maybe you're not aware of the laws. But now there were so many executive orders signed in by Obama, and even before him, there were other ones put in by the Bushes as well, where they could call an emergency and take our land. So our land is never our land. Even if you're all paid off, they could still take it from you. And the worst thing is that there's executive orders in there too that basically say they could put you to work, and it's horrible to think of, but it's right there. And I've talked about it in previous videos. So not only can they take our land, kick us off of it, but they could also put us to work in an emergency. So basically what you have there is pretty much slavery. And that is the world that we find ourselves in, this illusion of freedom. So recognizing that is the 3D world. And that is the world we find ourselves in, but it's also the world that's passing away at the same time. So that the system is passing, and that's why the lockdown is really coming on full steam today. And you guys probably saw that the gentleman that has been in hiding for like 7 years has been taken into custody and arrested, J.A., and you got to be careful about what you talk about nowadays, because you could all of a sudden have technical glitches. Your computer could crash. You could lose your channel, whatever it is. All that stuff is, definitely up for grabs, and it all is basically at the mercy of the ones that control this reality. The more I think about it, honestly, the more our world does look like, in so many senses, the Gnostic view of the world. And we keep seeing things coming out that we're living in a computer simulation, And Michael Maddow says we live underneath the firmament. Stop saying system. So I view things like now. I think really what it's time to do is, it's in so many ways we need to undo ourselves. We need to recognize that the conditioning is so deep. The conditioning is so deep. And I've talked about this before, how we're birthed into this world, and right away you're told what your reality is. The biggest grid of control that's been around us is framing and creating that reality that we find ourselves in. Hello, Talita. And that's what's going on here, is we're conditioning. So whether you view it as that we're living on a globe as conditioning, yeah. And then also if you view it as we're living on a flat earth as conditioning, that's conditioning too. It's all conditioning, because we've been given both. And so we have to make our own choices. As Robin says, it's a movie. Yes, and Lally Loving says we are in charge, and that's the part. That's the part that we need to really grab onto. We need to realize that we are in charge, because we allow ourselves to be enslaved in this matrix. And it's really allowing. It's giving away our power. Nadine says she just received a notification 2 minutes ago. Yeah, and that's pretty much me, because I decided to go on quickly, because when I've put things out like 6 hours in advance or a day in advance, then I run into a lot of technical issues, because I feel like they want to keep us quiet. And the Roots and Branch Homestead, I revoked my slave card. That's beautiful, because we need to get rid of the fear. And ultimately, we are very, very powerful beings. And if we go inward, that's where we'll find our own answers. And we need to recreate things in a positive way without all the fear that has been given to us. And, when we look at systems like that I grew up in, my father especially, because my father, he went to Catholic school. I was born Catholic. But he went to Catholic school all the way through, from start to finish, with the nuns whacking him with the ruler on the knuckles and all that. He was an altar boy and did all that. So when we look at that type of conditioning, it just frames our whole world view, so that it gives us one particular lens to look at the world. And that clouds everything. It clouds everything, and that's part of the whole plan. Most definitely. Ultimately, it's up to us to reclaim our own power, and recognize the divinity that lies within us. Because we are definitely co-creators here. We see that through quantum physics, that everything in this world basically responds to what we put out there. So think of it as, in effect, we truly are the programmers, and we can reprogram this world. Hi, Betsy. Good to see you. So we can reprogram this world, and that's the biggest picture. We need to reprogram this world. We have to. I mean, the world is messed up. So let's look at the fruits of the systems that have been given to us. What are the fruits of the systems that have been given to us? Well, constant warfare, we see that. It's everywhere. Constant fear. It's all basically about fearing your neighbor, thinking that other people are going to invade us at any time. Hello, Catherine. Hello, Fifth World. And hello, Louise and Tyler. Yes, most definitely. Part of it is the military-industrial complex, as Tyler is saying, and right now there may be a war going on between that and the banking cabal, but that's between them, and we're in the middle of it. We've seen these people that have ruled our planet. They operate in a fear-based greed and control system, and that's why they also do war against each other. is because that's their reality. It's a very, very heavy, dense 3D reality that they will not be able to go where we could go. Hello, Nettie. I'm from Connecticut originally as well. And yes, going within, reclaiming our own sovereignty. And that's what we need to focus on. And Roots and Branch says the only higher being is within you. And that's true. And we really have to go within. And, think about how we've been conditioned with so many of these belief systems to not go within. Think about what we used to do, and we still do it to a degree. In the old days when you only had 3 channels, you put on the nightly news, after Jeopardy and whatever it was, Wheel of Fortune, and you just take in the BS that they give us, the conditioning and the fear. And, I think in so many cases, our parents didn't realize it as much as we do. And then every generation is realizing this a little bit more. Exactly how, for one, obviously the mainstream media controlled narrative. And really, it was on a par in so many ways with, the control that we see in other countries that we've always, looked at as if, the civilians over there poor them because they're living in Russia or China. But in reality, the control grid was here too, in the Western world, in the United States and in Europe as well. It just was not quite as self-evident. And, now we can see that, and we look back on it. And if you guys are out of that matrix, and then you go look at, say Fox or MSNBC or, CNN, and you recognize, oh my God, look at the programming there. It's just so obvious. So we recognize that, but the programming's everywhere as well. Most definitely. Thank you, Katie. So what we need to do is to wake up and shed our programming, which obviously so many of you guys are, and so many people that tune into these type of YouTube channels, you're shedding it, you're letting it go. And as Susan Sanders says, please trust and love your fellow citizens. Don't be scared. Our fear is more damaging than anything else. And that is so true. It really is so true. And see how they've conditioned us. And Andrew, yeah, that is exactly what I was talking about. J.A. being arrested. It's going to another level, totally. And the lockdown is real. So, we were talking about this. I was having this discussion with a couple of friends, and I was saying, as much as I see all these earth changes going on, I fear the bigger concern is the lockdown and is the loss of our individual freedoms and the clamping down of the powers that be on all of us. And, that is a bigger concern, really, than even the earth changes. And so they condition us even through the movies. And I was, again, saying this to a different friend. Look at all these movies. Look at all these movies that show that when things go bonkers, when we lose the grid, when things happen like that, people are going to go crazy and just be, basically killing each other in droves. And that doesn't have to be the case. There's always some out there that will, take advantage of situations and that just love complete chaos. And yet, I really think that the majority of people out there would pull together. And I think that the vast majority would pull together and work together if we weren't being conditioned constantly to fear each other. Exactly. Katie said it, and I forgot the name of that movie, but yeah, The Purge. Exactly, The Purge. I mean, it's crazy. Think about the things that they feed us. And I can't really watch horror movies anymore. And honestly, when I was younger, I used to watch them all the time. And I can't watch them anymore. They're just painful and so distasteful, and you could see the programming in them. And yet that's what they want us to absorb and take in. They want us to look at a Walking Dead scenario, at a Purge scenario, all these different ones. And that's what they want us. That's going to be more fear, more control, keeping us basically away from our higher selves. And, so many people will even fear that terminology of higher self. Do you think there is a higher self? Do you think that there is a multidimensional reality, that we exist on different dimensions? What are your guys' thoughts on that? Fifth World says fear keeps people inside the Saturn matrix. Yes, it's definitely. Crystal, yeah, she agrees. Absolutely, we are completely conditioned to fear each other and believe we're all filled with greed. But yet, we will definitely rise to our best version of ourselves when we're forced to, in some ways, in some circumstances. There are so many people that will do amazing acts of generosity and helping others, basically good Samaritan acts. And diversity is a beautiful thing, and we just need to recognize that and grow together and just basically accept each other. As we learn not to judge each other and recognize that so many of the things that we judge, they're just a product of the fear-based matrix that we're in. Hello, Matrix done. And it's all about right now. Right now, it's all about purging. So I titled this one The Event because a lot of people have talked about the event. And so what is the event? Well, we've been hearing about it for quite a while, really. And, what it is that there will be a reaction from the sun. We see that the sun is changing. Any way we look at it, the sun is changing. I think that's kind of undeniable. I mean, we do recognize there's tons of geoengineering going on up there. That's kind of undeniable. There's tons of geoengineering going on. We see it all over the place. But yet, still, the sun is changing. It's not the same sun. And so we get into that, well, is it a sun simulator in front of the sun? And honestly, that's what I was thinking for the longest time. And it still might be the case. I've had some really interesting meditations with the sun recently, and I want to just put it out there for you guys to try to experiment with it. And what I've done is I put myself, like yesterday, for instance, in a corner of the yard in the morning, and basically was meditating, feeling the sun rising up on me. And it got super intense and super hot, even though it was like only 66 maybe out. I mean, not really hot at all. And yet the sun felt so intense, like you're going to get a really bad sunburn really quick. And then I recognized that it was perhaps fear-based conditioning getting a hold of me. Because look at how long we've been taught, put on your sunscreen. Put on your sunscreen. This goes back a long ways. Fear of skin cancer. We've been taught to be afraid of the sun for at least a generation and a half, 2 generations. I think they've been getting us ready for this for a very long time. They've known what's coming. Because I do think that the sun is the key to these times. It's the key to the transformation that's happening right now. And Fifth World says sun gazing is one of the best things you can do, and I agree. And well, let me get back to the first part here. So I felt the intensity of the sun. It made me think, maybe I should cover up. I don't have any sunscreen because I really don't believe in them. Because I know from doing research, if you put just plain zinc oxide on, you're okay. But so many of the big sunscreens, they have chemicals in there that can cause issues. And as the case with so many of our medicines in this world, they cause more problems than they fix. And I think that's, again, part of the bigger picture. And so I shifted my perception and thought, okay, I thank you for sending your life-giving rays to me. And I started to think that the rays are nourishing me. I'm taking in vitamin D, I need that. I'm taking in new information because ultimately light is information. And so I'm taking in new information to my DNA, and all of a sudden it just changed. And this is the second time that it happened where everything changed. And it wasn't hot anymore. It actually kind of got kind of cool. And I looked up, and there was no clouds covering. The sun was still just as full on my skin. But it was as if the sun was responding consciously to my signal. And so again, we know through quantum physics that everything is just basically potential that takes form because of the observer. So what we put out is what we get back. It's kind of like, it could be viewed in so many different ways. Cause and effect is part of it. Law of karma, part of it. But just intention and expectation as well. And so it changed. And it was just amazing. And so I encourage you guys to try the same if you want, if you feel driven to. Experience it. See what you think. Because I feel that the sun is the thing that is, it's a relay. For one, I think the ancients were right when they said that, the sun, all the planets, these are beings. Now, I think that we should almost kind of throw out the word, the gods, because it's gotten so misconstrued and it causes so much division. It really does. So, when you look at the ancient myths, I think there's a lot going on there. And there was a good, I forget if it was an email or a comment where somebody was saying, so if you view the Anunnaki as beings, then do you think that all the myths are talking about individuals as opposed to forces of nature? And that's a great question. I've talked about this before, about astrotheology, and I think that there's a lot of different levels to truth and a lot of different levels to reality. So I do think that we can look at things in turn them into parables, because you could find truths there. But I think also, there are in some cases, there really were actual beings as well that were among us. And again, I don't think that any of these gods, with plural, are prime creator any more than we are. They're just different beings. As the universe, I believe, is full of all different types of beings. Look at the life we have on the planet. And, if we look at some of the stuff that's living in the deep sea, in the volcanic vents, and around those areas, it looks so different than us and has such a different life than that stuff that's living on the land. Yet, it is its own form of life, and it's a different type of life. And yet it's still part of this planet, part of this biosphere, part of this living organism, because the Earth itself is a living organism as well. And, that's, again, part of the bigger picture that we've gotten out of touch with. And I think it's done on purpose. For one, there's been a disconnect done on purpose to get us out of being in touch with the Earth, as well as fearing the sun. Because if we're out of touch with the Earth and we're disconnected from the Earth, we won't feel the changes that the Earth is going through, as the Earth is going through the same thing we are going through right now, that period of change in consciousness. And so the Earth, the thought is the Earth is ascending, or rather we are not. It's going in through a dimensional shift. And maybe when it achieves that shift, it might look like Venus on the 3D reality, which appears to be completely inhospitable and that life can't exist on it. And maybe that will be the case, that the 3D Earth, won't be a place where life can't exist anymore, but life will have moved up to the 5D version of the Earth, a higher dimensional reality. And perhaps there really isn't an abundance of life on that 5D Earth right now, and it's bringing life with it as it ascends. And so if we're in tune with the Earth, we'll recognize the changing frequencies and we'll be able to attune ourselves to those frequencies and help ourselves grow and lift up and shed all the things that we need to shed in order to get there. So this is part of the bigger picture. This is, I think, the biggest picture, really. It's all about consciousness. Ultimately, from all my studies and going within, I feel that we really, truly are eternal. The real us is consciousness itself. We're energy. We're consciousness. As Einstein said, energy can't be created or destroyed. It just simply changes forms. And, as we see what can happen with water, going from, an ice to water to a vapor, and even perhaps to other stages beyond that, as we're learning about new stages of matter, new forms of energy as well. Many of you have talked about feeling that the stars are actually even communicating with you. And, well, if our sun can communicate with us, then why not the stars? Because, the stars are like the sun. The sun is a star. And it's known in many different forms of energy work. If we go into, medical QiGong philosophy, if we look deeply within, and many other healers like Barbara Brennan has talked about it, at our core, at every human's core, the true us, we look like a sun. That is what we really are. We're basically like a conscious ball of energetic plasma. And that's truly what we are at our core. We are, it's just fascinating. All these things really do have a basis in reality. As we know, we are stardust. We know our bodies are made from stardust. But yet, also, our true essence is consciousness itself. Max Planck said, and he was a brilliant man, when one of the founders of quantum physics, you just can't get behind consciousness, saying that you can't find something that precedes it. Consciousness comes first. And the physical reality is basically made for consciousness. So we're here basically occupying these meat suits, so to speak. They're a vehicle for consciousness. And when you see the Bhagavad Gita and it says, worn out bodies are discarded by the user, just as worn out garments are discarded by the user. So it makes a little bit more sense, because we come into these bodies in order to experience this reality. Now, Buddha said that we were trapped in a cycle of karma, going back and forth between lower dimensions, basically. And in this constant cycle of karma that keeps us tied to this particular matrix. And the only way out is to go within and recognize who you are really, which is that you are really part of Source. You are Source, in effect. We are all basically individual flames taken from the fire of Source. So that divine spark is within all of us. And ultimately, the big mystery of the ages is that we're one. And when we recognize that, then we can shift our consciousness up to higher dimensions and escape the karma cycle. And the karma cycle is what the powers that be have taken advantage of, the law of cause and effect in the lower realms of 3D and 4D, in order to keep us in this. Look at how they sell the lower emotions. Look at how they sell the fear-based emotions or the greed-based emotions. Look at our system, the capitalistic system that dominates this world. How many of you guys have ever heard of Rammstein? You know Rammstein, the band? We're all living in America. And that's the truth. That's the truth. The capitalistic system has been given to the world in order to keep it in a state of perpetual greed and competition. So does communism work? Well, nothing's worked so far as what we are given, because we stay in the fear-based lower realms and we allow ourselves to be put against each other. And we see greed occupy a communist system just as it will a capitalistic system, because of the lower human natures that are still being manipulated by those that have been in charge of this realm. And there you see, sure, there's people in the communist system that live as well as some of the rich people in the capitalistic system. And the oligarchy exists in both. But we can change this. And so, some people like Michael Tellinger with Ubuntu has tried to, by basically saying, let's look at contributionism and what you are good at being what you contribute to society. We're kept in this system. It's basically a perpetual slave system when you get down to it, if we allow ourselves to be controlled by it. And just think about what we're sold, keeping up with the Joneses. You have to have, now we have to have both husband and wife working, making more money. You need the bigger house. You need your lawn to look nicer, put more poisons and toxins on your lawn. Everything that they've really, really sold us has been all about keeping us into a very, very small frequency range. And they're using the earth changes to do this as well, to keep us in fear. And that's part of the picture as well. And honestly, I question just about everything now as far as what really is natural and what really is man-made. And that's something that's so hard to draw the line on. I think most people are waking up to that. I think a lot of us jumped automatically on the grand solar minimum wagon and said, yeah, it's the sun. Of course it's the sun. The sun controls everything. The sun's way more powerful than the earth, way bigger. And of course, the sun can affect the weather and the earth. And, that's a given. I don't think there's any doubt there. But, blaming everything on just being a grand solar minimum, I don't think takes everything into account. And also, when we look at the sun cycle, and yes, there are solar minimums, and then there are grand solar minimums, and there's all different intensities of that. But put the fact that there's so much geoengineering being done, what if all these chemicals weren't being sprayed in the sky? What would our weather look like then? And we could even say, what would the sun look like then? Because we don't really know. Because even when it was a beautiful, clear day like yesterday, there still are particles in the sky. And so we really, really don't know. If you guys saw on Evolutionary Energy Arts number 2 yesterday, I did a 1-minute video on the sun. And it appeared to me like it was pulsating and sending out energy. And it's crazy. I've never seen anything like that back in the old days. I do think the sun is changing. And I do think that the intent is for the sun to trigger the change of all life, not only on Earth, but in this whole solar system, of which, there could be all different types of life forms here. We really wouldn't even know it, especially if they were trying to hide themselves from us. So I do think that the sun is trying to do something positive, in my opinion. I feel that it's trying to do something positive. And I feel that it's trying to raise us up. And so when we see all this talk about the grid going down, they know it's going down. And I do believe that in the majority of most of our lives, we'll see the grid go down. That's my gut, my inner feeling. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because I think the grid has been used to keep us in that lower frame of vibration. So the grid going down might actually end up being our liberation in so many ways. We need to reconnect to the earth itself. We need to reconnect to each other. That is what needs to be done. And so they are trying to make us fear that. And as one of you guys was saying there, Parzival was saying, speak your intent into the sun. You're right. You're right. And he also said sun gazing doesn't cause blindness. And at certain times of day, especially, if you're able to watch it when the sun first rises and when it goes down and sets. When I was in Florida, I was telling you guys before, I used to gaze at the sun, and it was amazing. I wouldn't do it in the middle of the day, even though I do have friends that do it in the middle of the day. And they say this sun is different, but they can still do it if they shift their intent and their focus. But what happened, I was with a very, very good friend on the beach, and we were at, we were in, I think we were at Siesta Key that day. We were at a drum circle, and the sun was going down, and I could see energy around people. I've been able to see that for 30 years now. And after sun gazing, I could see everybody's cone of their crown chakra, and also see the violet tinge, which is something I don't usually see. I could see if I usually focus really, really hard, it's not really that you're focusing really hard. It's actually that you're going deeper into a state and relaxing your eyes so that you could take it in. But after sun gazing, I didn't even have to. I was watching everybody's chakras. I could see the fact that they look like little tornadoes. And I was watching the interaction between people and their chakras, and I could see people in conversation and their chakras connecting with each other and exchanging information, and it was mind-blowing. And that's part of what's going on here. The new reality is going to be such that there is no way in the world they can lie to us anymore, and they could control us through lives. It's just not going to be possible anymore. And so that's what's really going on here. That's what's really going on. Yes, Chris P says it's more like not focusing than it focuses. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's amazing. And so, when we recognize that perhaps we really are living in the mind of God, and all this, you have more and more studies coming out, and yes, we can't trust the studies because so many of them are funded, by the powers that be. But at the same time, I feel like there has to be a disclosure that they give. It really does feel like that's the case. They have to give a disclosure as we go. So we have the opportunity to see truth, and yet they go ahead and, keep controlling at the same time. When we look at, and I showed you guys this before. So as it says right here, did you realize that there are as many or more nerve cells in the human brain than there are stars in the Milky Way? And so is that a coincidence? Is that just a coincidence? How expansive are our minds? And when we look at it, and this is as above, so below, and so many people are terrified of it. They think it's an occult thing, and occult just means hidden. It just means that everything is fractal in nature. The whole is contained in the individual unit. And we look at a brain cell, and it happens to look exactly like the universe itself. And this is why we are living in the mind of God. We truly are. And then think about that. There are so many things, so many beings that are living in you right now. And to them, you are God, literally. And, Jesus quoted it, "Is it not written, ye are gods?" And there's so much truth intertwined with so much deception, unfortunately. And, so many things that steer us off down fearful paths. That, it's a matter of us opening up our minds and our hearts and going within so that we will be illuminated with the reality that really is and the truth of the matter and just how powerful we are. Beings that want to control you don't want you stepping into your power. They want to keep you in fear. Fear of punishment. Fear of being left out. Fear of being not a part of something. All that is definitely part of the bigger picture. And so Taylor says, no, Michael, you can't take a few of Jesus' words and throw out the rest. Well, read them all. Read the Gnostic texts. Have you read the Gnostic books? because the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, Constantine, you can't beat them, join them, but put something out that you could control them. And that's exactly what happened. Look at the history of the church. Look at how many people have died in the name of religion. The name of religion, the name of God. More people have killed each other in the name of God than just about anything. And when they're doing that, it's not that they're serving God's words and purpose. No, quite the opposite. It's all fear-based again. It's all fear-based. If we want to look at the entirety of things, look at the book of Leviticus, because it says it's fine to beat your slave. Do we still believe that? Was that ever fine? It says that if your wife cheats on you, then take her out and go ahead. It's fine. You could stone her to death. That's in Leviticus. Does that sound good? Does that sound just? Does that sound right? Look at it. And that's the problem. Most people haven't read everything. They haven't questioned why. They just say, well, when I get to something I can't figure out, it's just a divine mystery of God and I have to accept it. And that's what they want you to do. Just blindly accept it. We need to go within to find the truth. When we allow people to tell us what the truth is, we're just taking their truth. We're accepting their reality. And that's not being a co-creator. That's not using your divine potential. It's quite the opposite. It's becoming a zombie. And that's what they look at us like. And that's what the allegory is with the zombies. It's basically people that are not awake. They're just following blindly in fear. So we need to look at that. We need to question everything. So Buddha had said, don't believe me because I tell you so. Don't believe your parents because they tell you something, or your teachers. You must go within, judge it intellectually, weigh it in your heart, and then if it's good, and it's something that is for the greater good of all, as well as yourself, and it feels right and true to you, then accept it. Exactly. Winston says, does your God want you to fear? Not my God. And so, that's part of it. These beings that control the matrix that we're in, they want us to fear, and they want to keep us divided. Because they know that once we get out of that, we're very, very powerful. And we can do so much. And we could create a different world. It doesn't have to be like this. It really doesn't. But those in power want to keep us in that lower fear-based emotional vibratory frequency. And so when we look at this, we see the fractal nature of the universe. Again, the patterns. Is it just coincidence? And the whole philosophy that has been used, that divide and conquer, it's all very, very Machiavellian. And it's been done throughout time. And it goes back throughout the last 5,000 years, most definitely. And probably before that as well. Although, we have so much evidence of very, very advanced older civilizations, but we really don't know much about them at all. And it's pretty fascinating to look at that. Yes, and as Catherine Akers said, Jesus also said he never judged or condemned. Do you remember? Exactly. Who has no sin? Cast the first stone. And he also said to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, you're not of my God, because you're of the other one. You're of the control system of the world. So, the Pharisees and the Sadducees were, the religious leaders of that day, and they were not following his teachings. They were not following the true teachings, which, when you break it down, it simply breaks down to love and compassion and non-judgment. Everything else you don't have to worry about. Everything else is basically, for the most part, fear-based dogma. And if we do those things, if we don't judge and we live in compassion for others, it's going to change the vibratory signature of our bodies and of our entire being. And it's going to change us into a different consciousness. And then, as he said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's just a seed waiting to start. Then the kingdom of heaven will grow, and it'll spread from person to person to person, and we'll actually manifest it here on this planet. And that's what they don't want done at all cost. Because, this is the reality that they've created for us and kept us in. And it's up to us to liberate ourselves. And one of the things that's been hitting me stronger than ever is the need to just discard all dogma. We need to let go of dogma. Dogma divides. So thinking that, our own particular dogma is the only right dogma. Most people don't even know that when the Council of Nicaea was debating what Christianity was going to come forward, so many people didn't even view Christ as divine. That wasn't something that was a consensus. That was one of the things they argued back and forth. Many people thought he was, just a divinely inspired teacher. And, most people don't even recognize or realize the history that lies there, and we have to go deeper. Religion has divided us. Spirituality, recognize the spiritual side of things, can unite us. And so that's one of the things that we are really going through in this age. And if you saw the quote from Albert Pike, and he was definitely a high-level Mason with the inside knowledge of what's going on in the system. And this was all planned out. If you take it to be true, the statements that he made, which later on, towards his deathbed, he said, I was just joking about there being 3 world wars. I was just joking. Yet, was he? 2 of them have happened. And so the only way I feel like we could avoid the third is by a major shift in our consciousness. And we need to do that. And Seb says, the heart is the key to enter the kingdom of God. Yeah, because it's been inside of us the whole time. Did Christ say, just hang in there until I come back and I'm going to kick some ass? Did he actually ever say that? Because, some people believe that. And one of my teachers, when I was in my teens, going to two Bible classes, Bible studies every week, on top of spending like 4 hours on Sunday in church, when we were talking about, what do you feel is the real, and I love this guy. I absolutely loved him, and I looked up to him so much. And I know he thought he had the right view on things. He said, well, we're going to see, Jesus come back with his legions of angels, and they're going to basically kill everybody that's not a believer, cast them into hell so they could be tortured forever. And I said, and what are you going to be doing? Well, I think I'll be caught up in the clouds, and I'll just be watching it from above, and I'll be saying, yeah, God, go ahead. Yeah, Jesus, go kill them all, torture them all. And, I just looked at him and said, and I was idolizing you? Wow. It was a real wake-up call. How can you want to see other people suffer? Is that really what you feel is the outcome here? And, it started my looking at things in a totally different light. And not that these dark energies that are running our world, don't deserve the karma. Because we all do get the karma from what we create. Unless we could step out of this matrix and lift ourselves up to where we're no longer creating that karma and that reality. And so we have to recognize the divide and conquer tactics, which are always done through fear. You got to watch out for this guy. Are you guys familiar with the story of Machiavelli, the prince? Basically, you take it that there's these 3 entities, 3 beings, right? And so this one guy, three rich lords, and this one guy gets the idea that, he wants both of his neighbors' lands. And, their lands look better than mine. He's got more slaves, more serfs, more peasants, nicer land, bigger castle. I want them all. If I tell Mr. Jones, let's say, that Mr. Smith, he's been saying bad things about him. He's planning on stealing his territory. He's going to take his castle. He's going to poison the water, whatever it is. Just start getting them suspicious about the other guy. And then going over to Mr. Smith and saying, you know what Mr. Jones said? Do you know what Mr. Jones is thinking? Well, and then they end up killing each other, and the other guy swoops in, takes it all. That's kind of the mentality that's been going on in this world for thousands of years. That's part of it. That is exactly how we're controlled. And again, we put labels on things. So Carl Sagan said every star may be a sun to someone. And there's so many different things we could look at that by, So, for one, obviously, there's so much life probably out there in the universe. I would tend to think that's the case. All different types of life. And every single one of those stars we see may be a sun giving life to other beings in that solar system. And yet every sun is also still a being with consciousness at the same time. So, there's so many different layers to our reality. So many different layers. And that's part of it. We need to be able to look deeper and deeper through the layers. So consciousness means, well, now this is just one, so I'm not going to agree with it totally, but it says you are not to learn from others what is right and what is wrong. There is no need to learn from anybody. You have simply to go in. Just the inward journey is enough. The deeper you go, the more consciousness is released. Well, on the whole, I'll agree with that most definitely. We can learn some things from others, but we don't want to just accept what others tell us at all. And so even what I'm saying here, go within, because I'm very, very fallible too. I'm full of faults. We all are. And always making mistakes. I'm always making mistakes. There's always things I could do better. And just recognizing that is the biggest key, to recognize that. But, how many systems are out there? How many thought systems are out there? And look what we have on the world. Look at what we have, on the world. So going within, we have to learn for ourselves. We must learn for ourselves. We must also take responsibility for our co-creative powers. So it's up to us to shift our consciousness out of that fear-based mode. Katie says, we need the best of every system and then toss the rest. Yeah, there's so much beauty to be found in many systems. So when I was living in Sarasota, and I truly do miss this tremendously. I used to go to kirtans, and kirtan basically is something where kind of hippie-ish kind of folks get together and sing songs and just basically have a good time. And some of the stuff we would do would be Vedic mantras, which would terrify a lot of people. Other things we would do would be Christian songs, which might terrify others. And other stuff might be things like John Lennon's Imagine. It could be anything. It was whatever anybody wanted to say. When we just went around, and if anybody had anything they wanted to do, even meditation, we would do meditations as well, and it was freaking beautiful. It was really beautiful. There was so much love in there. There was no condemnation. There wasn't anybody that wouldn't accept the other person. And there was so much respect given to the other people's system. And a lot of the friends that I developed in there were fascinating people, because the majority of them were born Jewish. And the majority of them, also professed a belief in Christ. Maybe not, the traditional view of Christ, but definitely had a belief in Christ. And yet, they would call themselves Hindu Jews, like Hindu Jews, and joke about it, because really what they did was just what I think it was Katie was saying, taking the best from all the systems. I mean, we would do some Jewish chants too. And, it didn't matter. It didn't matter because it's your intent. It's all about intent. If your intent is love-based, then beautiful. And if you're throwing out positive vibrations, then beautiful. It's not about saying exactly the right word. Just like when we look at the differences in all the Christian denominations, there's like over 1,000 Christian denominations out there. There's so many. Some will say you have to have a full water baptism, otherwise you're not being saved. And, there's all these little differences here and there. Some believe in just basically faith without works, and you're fine. You don't have to actually do anything. All you have to do is say, I believe that Jesus died for my sins, and I could still be, I could still beat up my wife, I could still kick my dog, and it's all good because, I believe in Jesus dying for my sins. And then there's others that, will quote, faith without works is dead, and believe that, we have to actually show that we are saved through what we put out into the world. And then there are those that say, we should simply be Christ-like, not judge others, live in peace, live in compassion and harmony, and just let life be life. And, everybody has their different view. Very, very different view on it. And so when we talk about a relationship with Christ, what do you think that really means? Do you think there's certain words you have to say? Some will say, well, you have to address him as Yeshua. You can't address him as Jesus because Jesus never really existed. And, there's again, we're breaking it down into dogma. So do you have to have a relationship with Christ? Well, if you view Christ as that which is love, light, non-judgment, peace, compassion, and all the best in humanity, the potential of humanity, most definitely you have to have a relationship with Christ. Do you have to use a certain name? Okay, do you call him Issa? Do you call him Yesu? Do you call him Joshua? Do you call him Jesus? Do you call him Yeshua? Which one? Is just one of those the right word to use? And all the rest mean that you're going to hell and eternal damnation and punishment? So the point is, let's get over the dogma and let's embrace the actual energy and what was shown, which was loving compassion. That's it, Again, don't take the mote out of try to take the mote out of the little speck out of your brother's eye when you have a 2x4 in your own. So when we judge, we create this negative karma cycle again. And so that's part of, and we could call it law of cause and effect. And that's part of the whole plan. That's part of what they've done. So these great teachers have come to us. These great beings have come to us and shown us the way. And then after they're gone, the controllers swoop in and they change things. They change things enough to keep us eternally divided. And they use fear to be their tool to keep us divided. And that's what happens. And again, we're multidimensional beings. Is this not what's meant by the kingdom of heaven lies within you? It's already here. It's you on a higher vibrational frequency. It's a matter of shifting your reality to match that of Christ's. And I had a really unusual thing happen, and this was back in 2009. And I was reading a book called The Gnosis of the Cosmic Christ by Tao Malachi. who is a Gnostic Tao, which is basically priest. And I was sitting there in bed, and I was reading this book, and I was feeling my heart chakra just open up wide with compassion and acceptance. And my ex-wife was there as well, and she was reading. We're both wide awake. We hadn't drank anything but tea. And actually, at this point, I was pretty much eating a raw vegan diet for the most part, and was really going deep in meditation on a regular basis and doing QiGong every single day. I was in a really, really good place spiritually and cleansing myself. And I swear to you guys, there was this light that came on in the room, and it was crazy bright, and it was pure white crystalline, and it was right between us, kind of on the wall. And we just slowly turned towards each other with our eyes wide open, and it just faded away. And we were like, what was that? And I felt like it was kind of a blessing or an acknowledging for me personally that I was on the right path. And I felt like it had to do with that view that I was shedding, and still in the process of shedding. And I still am shedding dogma. I'm still shedding fear and still shedding all those things. We are all going through that. And if you guys are familiar with In5D, IN5D, Greg Prescott, he lives in Siesta Key. So he's in the Sarasota area. That's where I used to be as well. And so he did a live last night, and he was talking about ascension symptoms. And so, this is a guy that's very, very, I think he's very cool, and I think he's very, very with it, and I think he understands a lot of things. And he was just talking so openly and honestly about, still the 3D things that we have to shed, the lower vibrational frequencies, and still he's shedding them too. And a lot of them are coming through as these symptoms, and a lot of our illnesses and our things that we're experiencing, a lot of it could be that we're shedding these energy blockages which are in our bodies. And I do think that is the case. And sometimes it could be painful. Sometimes it could be, it could come through as body aches. It could come through as allergies. It could come through as vision problems, ringing in the ears, you name it. Trouble sleeping, all these different things. I've had a lot of trouble sleeping lately, a ton. And it wasn't usually the case for me, but it's been that way. And I know it's because I'm purging. There's a lot to purge. There's a lot that's being purged. But I still have a ton to purge and work through. And so many of us do as well. Right now, I'd say that's one of the most critical things right now is purging. And, the Roots and Branch Homestead says, it can be brutal, but it's so exciting. And yeah, that's true. Because ultimately, we're going to a better place. We're going to a better reality, and we're going to escape the negative matrix and create a new reality. And that's where we're heading. And we need to recognize it. And so I wanted to stop on that note and thank you guys so much for joining me with this. And I do appreciate all your support, the Patreons that we have, and those that have helped with Ko-Fi. As I've let you guys know, they're definitely clamping down on all of these type of channels, so that it's pretty much going to be impossible to keep going, making a living doing just this. Supplementing with other things, and the shift is going to have to change so that this becomes almost secondary, but this is primary in the message, because this is how we're reaching people. And I know this is my mission, is to reach as many people as possible, because that's my purpose, is to shift consciousness and to be a healer. And the healing part of it I love as well. And before I started the channel, I was extremely busy doing the healing side of it. And I love that. And that was a blessing, because if we allow ourselves to be a healing vessel for others, we are in turn blessed. And honestly, that's when I was making my best progress. So I'm going to start to focus a little bit more on the healing aspect as well. I'm going to be talking more about energy, making more videos on energy, QiGong, energy work, as well as health and healing, and how we could purge ourselves, diet, nutrition, things like that. And we'll still, keep going with the earth changes and everything that's happening in this world, and still keep going with, sharing and uncovering all the things that need to be uncovered. But we're shifting into a timeline now where, I think there's so many of us awakening that more people need help and purging, cleansing, letting go, and really discovering who they are on the inside and embracing their higher self, embracing the best them that they could be in this life, the best you that you can be in this life. That's the most important thing right now. That is, just front and center. So the shift has to be more about, how do we help with those things? How do we release our fears? How do we release our conditioning? How do we purge and cleanse the body? Because as you cleanse the body, you're going to also cleanse yourself spiritually. The two are intertwined. And that's really something that we have to recognize. And it surprised me when I first started studying yoga and going into the yoga system that, I was kind of thinking that it's really all about consciousness and the body is nothing. But no, it's not the case, because the body is holding our consciousness. And we could help ourselves by also strengthening the body and cleansing the body from QiGong, medical QiGong philosophy, also Chinese medicine philosophy. You have what's called ley channels, these energy channels that develop off the prime meridians. And what they are storage places for energies we don't want to deal with. And so really what they are is they're emotional in nature most of the time, as most disease is dis-ease. And this dis-ease comes mostly from emotions. And so that's what we learn, when we study traditional Chinese medicine and medical QiGong. Disease is dis-ease first, and we could stop the dis-ease, get ourselves into a state of ease, and alleviate the disease. And also let go of these trapped, stored energies that are holding us back and actually causing us physical pain in so many times. So, as always, my friends, thumbs up. Thank you so much for your support. Please do share the word as much as possible. Make sure you subscribe to Evolutionary Energy Arts too as well. God bless, my friends. Stay in love and light, compassion and non-judgment. Be well. God bless and namaste.